We're not live on
Okay.
video. Okay. And now clicking go live. And okay,
hmm
3, 2, 1, we are going live. Hi guys. So today I have amazing guest again, Darla Ridilla, and she is high value woman and she is self-love mentor. Darla, very welcome. How are you today?
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Me
I'm
too.
doing great. How about you? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so exciting so excited that we met. Darla, would you like to introduce yourself? Where are you from? What do you do? Who do you help? Everything is so interesting about you. We had a tiny pre-chat, so it's just amazing. Yeah, well, just
Yes.
please introduce.
Yes. So I'm originally from Alexandria, Virginia, outside of Washington, D.C., but I currently live in Durango, Colorado. And you said a little bit about what I do. Is that what you said?
Yeah, yeah, what do you do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm a self-love mentor, and I help women really to, first of all, get to know who they are. And once they can do that, they can learn to value themselves, and then they become able to love themselves. As women, I mean, I'm sure you'll agree, we are always giving to others. We're mothers, we're children, we're employees, we're business owners. And then what we unintentionally do is give everything away, and there's nothing left of what we once were.
Yeah. And Darla, how did you started your journey, if you don't mind me asking? How did this started for you?
Yeah, it started a long time ago. It did start in my childhood. And when I was growing up, I didn't have very good examples of what healthy relationships look like.
Mm,
Both of my parents were very dysfunctional. My father, I'm pretty sure, was bipolar. So I never knew what version of my dad was going to come home when he got home from work every day. He could be totally fine and there would be no fights, or he could come home in a bad mood and anything would set him off and he would start screaming, yelling, breaking things, maybe, getting abusive with my mom. And I learned a very unhealthy pattern of always walking on eggshells, never knowing what to expect, always being hyper vigilant. And unfortunately, what happened was as I got into my adult relationships, not only because I was hypervigilant all the time, but I didn't have that healthy father-daughter relationship as well. So I was attracted to men who kept me on eggshells or were emotionally unavailable. I was trying to fill that void, but with the wrong person instead of
mm,
filling it with myself. And I ended up in 2004, 2003. I met a very handsome, charming man who swept me off my feet. And unfortunately, I was still married to my first husband when I met him, and not something I'm really proud of. But I ended up leaving my first husband and getting involved with this man. And we were together for 10 years, married for 6. And what I discovered a year after I left is not only had I been in an abusive relationship, but I had been involved with a malignant narcissist. And yeah,
oh my
it's
God.
it's tough. You know, it's there there's a lot of dynamics that happen when we first meet a narcissist. First of all, I knew nothing about them. I
Yeah.
had heard the term.
Yeah. So
I
I
always thought they were,
yeah,
yes,
sorry,
have you heard,
but
so you're familiar with the term,
yeah, yeah.
but I always imagined that they would be very obvious, a sleazy car salesman. I mean, just, or a total jerk. And what I didn't know was there's a type of narcissist called covert narcissist. They're extremely charming, most of the time, also very good looking. And they shower you with attention. You've probably heard the term love bomb. He became the knight in shining armor I thought I was looking for. He was very attentive. He saw that my marriage was crumbling, even though initially I didn't even realize it, but it was.
Mm,
And they're usually very intelligent.
mm,
And he was observing me and my ex-husband and seeing all of the things that were lacking in my marriage. And he swooped in and filled that void. And I ended up falling madly in love with this person, marrying him, totally trusting him. And what I didn't realize is that I lost every shred of who I was. He told me how to dress. He told me what I was allowed to talk about. He told me what colors to wear on my shirt, all in the name of love. And I know what's best for you. But he was very controlling. And after he moved me from Virginia to Colorado, he upped his game because now he separated me. While I wanted to go to Colorado, I wanted to go to Boulder. It was my dream to live out west. He capitalized on it, and now it was just me and him, and I knew no one for the first 6 months. And I think that's really where he upped it. And then we got married the following year. While we had friends, there was still that it's you and me against the world. And so I was living with two different people. There was the Teflon Don charming man that everybody liked outside of our house, but inside of our house, he was extremely controlling, very manipulative. There were a couple of times I actually saw his eyes turn black, and I thought I had imagined it, and apparently it's a physical thing. They get so filled with rage that their pupils fully dilate. He looks like a demon, which I still think he is. But what happened was is that because I wanted to please him and because I didn't want him to abandon me, and that was my own stuff, I did everything possible to keep him. Also, because he went through a period of love bombing and then what they call devalue, where he starts to not pay so much attention to you, make snide remarks, and then discard, where either they physically leave or in his case, he would give me the silent treatment, or he'd ignore me, or he would berate me. And then that cycle would start all over again, but it would speed up. It would get faster each cycle. And because I was addicted to him at this point, I was so desperate to get back to the person I fell in love with, the original version that he showed up as. But I
Mm.
didn't know that version didn't exist. It was all an act to hook me.
Oh my God. So
Yeah.
all using all the charms and the nice words and things like that, and you just get
Mhm.
hooked. And then after 1 year, you're so in love that you literally can't do anything about it. Like you just you choose to stay and you on your own, like you don't have your family as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he moved me across the country within 2 years. And yeah, and I madly fell in love with him pretty much right away. And that's on me. I wanted to be rescued. I didn't have a really high level of self-respect, and I didn't know that. But what got me out of that is that he just I thought things were better than ever. We had for a while we had stopped fighting. We were getting along. And then he's just randomly one day started acting very bizarre all day, all weird. You know how when someone will
Mhm.
act like something's wrong? And then I
Yeah.
kept saying, "What's going on? What's
Yeah.
wrong?" "Oh, nothing." And I just knew. I didn't realize at the time I'm intuitive. And so intuitively, I felt it that something was off. Um, and then finally, like 11 o'clock at night, he just suddenly in bed says, "I don't know the fine line between tolerating your behavior and asking for a divorce." And that's how he laid it on me. And that was probably the worst day of my well, no, the second almost the worst day of my life. The worst was yet to come. I was so devastated. And then he did try to retract that 2 days later. He's like, "Well, we have a lease on the house. What are we gonna do?" But I was actually, even though I was abused a lot as a young child, I was also a scrapper. I would defend myself because my mom refused to defend me. And so I learned from a very young age that I had me to depend on. And while that wasn't an unpleasant experience, it actually is what saved me. It's why I found the strength to leave. Even though I had no idea that I was trauma bonded and was suffering from what they call Stockholm syndrome. I didn't know that till after I left. I
Yeah.
had the strength in that moment, that day he tried to get me to stay, to say, "No, you don't want me here. I'm out. I'm leaving." And I did.
And after how many years? 10 years together, you were like,
10 years.
oh my
Hmm.
God, how did you manage like to get this? This is so because a lot of females like, if it's so hard because you already
Hmm.
destroyed. 10 years like you already destroyed, right?
Yeah, I was. I mean, I look at pictures of myself and I was so gaunt. I was a lot, a lot more overweight. The other thing that he did, which is very common, is they call it financial abuse. So he wanted to invest in real estate and he convinced me to turn over all of my life savings to him. I cashed in all of my retirement funds that were available to me at the time, all my savings, and we were going to buy houses and flip them. And then a few months later, he came to me and said, "Oh, all the money's gone." And there was just absolutely no way, even though we were renting a house we couldn't afford, even if you'd factor that in, part of that time I had a severance package from a company I was laid off from. So that was full pay. But what he was doing, and this is a common tactic, he wanted to make it quote unquote impossible financially for me to leave.
Oh,
Because when I did, I had all my credit cards were maxed. I had no money to my name. And what I ended up doing to pay the first month's rent is I sold my motorcycle. And I literally lived day by day. Like there were moments when I did not know where the money was going to come from for my rent, and I started working for a temp agency. And luckily, I was able to manifest and always pay my bills. But it was so this part. This is where the worst part comes in. But it was also where my beginning started. Is after several months of struggling financially, coming to the realization that something is really wrong here. At this point, I still didn't even know I'd been in an abusive relationship. I just was starting to get this weird feeling that, wait a minute, this is bizarre. Like something feels wrong. I feel like, I don't know. And I really kind of was at my wits' end and I was going to take my life. And I was on the floor sobbing in my apartment, thinking about how I was going to do it right so the bullet landed where I wanted it to. And then this thought came into my mind that he's telling everybody I'm crazy, but I'm not crazy. He's just, that's a story. And if I kill myself, I've just given him ammunition. I'm not here to say that's not true. And it was because I didn't want him to win. That's the only thing that stopped me. And it was in that moment of surrender, I just said to my higher power, I can't live like this anymore. I do not want to get off this floor. But if I do, you have to show me the way. And that is when a counselor came into my life and she told me he's he's abusive and I denied it. No, no, you don't understand. I love him. And I was so brainwashed. I had another friend who did a lot of spiritual work on me who was also a licensed therapist who said he's
mhm.
a psychopath. Of course, I rebuffed that as well. But as I started to work on myself, I was already involved in a spiritual center, which those people, after a night of crying all night, and it was very obvious by my appearance, they gave me so much support. And I just totally ingratiated myself into this spiritual center, into my personal growth. I realized if I am going to do this, I'm kind of a go big or go home kind of person. And hello. And it was the beginning for me. That
Yeah.
moment was my lowest moment, but it was the moment that I realized that I didn't have to keep living like that.
But so what happened the next? How did you navigate it? It's just so much trauma, 10 years.
So much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm still navigating it. Trauma and narcissistic abuse is something that there are many, many things that happened to me over my lifetime that I'm still healing from, always will be. But what I've learned over the years is you plateau for a while, or you take a step back and you make a mistake. Because I had two more narcissists after that were boyfriends. But there's also been accelerations. It's really just continuing to work on myself, even through the hard times. And I've had a lot of hard times. This past 6 months has been another trial and tribulation for me for other reasons. But a year and a half ago, I had another acceleration, and that was I had broken up with my last narcissist in October 23. And I decided over Thanksgiving and Christmas, I was going to go out of town. And I came back through Colorado and through Ouray. And as I'm driving back home through Durango, there was just this serendipitous moment where I became obsessed with moving here, which I did do last March.
Mhm.
Um, that meant so in between, you have that year. year and a half in between, I got involved into other relationships. And I really started to listen to this book on the way out to Colorado called Single on Purpose by John Kim. And it hit me like a freight train. He said, you cannot just look in the mirror and say, I love you. That's not what self love is about. That's Pollyanna. It's not realistic. You have to know who you are. Do you know who you are? And I realized, holy cow, I don't. I don't. I know who people say I am, and they've said my whole life, I'm too this, I'm too that, I'm too big. They've already told me what I'm not supposed to be. And so I really started to listen more to his podcast. I finished the book. I started to read more books on like Glennon Doyle, her book Love Warrior. I've read that twice. I've always been into personal development, but I really started to get involved. And I realized, holy cow, I don't know who I am. I came across Matthew Hussey, Sabrina Zohar, and when I went back out in the dating world, well, yes, I had 2 short relationships last year that were mistakes, but they were learning opportunities, and
Mm,
I shifted. This isn't happening to me, it's happening for me.
mm.
This sucks, it hurts, I don't like it, I made another mistake, I'm angry, but what can I learn from this situation?
Yeah, powerful. Wow.
Mhm.
And could you tell Darla, uh, do you know now, as you learn from these mistakes, the next partner, how do you how to know like that he is not narcissist? Like how to know that?
I may not know that in the beginning, to be honest. Um,
Mhm.
there, there's a couple of men that have come in my purview last year. While I suspect they were narcissist. One I went on one date with, one I never did because he was playing games. The advantage of me honoring and loving myself and I've raised my standards, first of all. I'm noticing red flags sooner. So, what I'm doing is changing my approach because I probably will encounter another narcissist. They are attracted to women who are powerful and strong because they want to break you. They also have this bizarre disillusion that they can take kind of like a vampire, they can suck out my good qualities into themselves and become what they aren't. It's a very bizarre thing. But I will come across more. But I've decided to, from here on out, to take it slower. I I've been trained in somatics, which is our nervous system and how we process trauma and store and release it. So I'm much more aware now of my body sensation. And I am really starting to pay attention to not only do how does my nervous system feel when I'm in your presence, even more importantly, when I'm out of your presence. Do I feel grounded? Is your behavior consistent? Are your words and your actions matching? Are you trying to love bomb me and fast track the relationship? Because that's a common tactic. Keeping my emotions in check. And I now have a process in place where every Monday morning, when I sit down for an hour to do what I call CEO time to evaluate my business and what I should be focusing on for the week, I've set aside a few minutes of that hour to think about, have I been on any dates this week and how do I feel about this person? Not how do they make me feel? How do I feel
Um,
about them?
oh,
Can
yeah.
I can I have a candid conversation with them? Are they is personal development important? I mean, all of these things. And really, quite frankly, time will tell. Because a narcissist is going to get impatient if you don't let them love bomb you, if you tell them you want to take it slow. That's too much work for them.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because you got,
Yeah,
as you said at the beginning, you just don't know. But if you
you
taking
don't.
everything slow, real slow, then they just can't wait it, right?
No,
Then
most of the time, yeah. I mean, and I'll admit it, it's a scary thing. It's
yeah.
scary because I don't want to attract another one. So I've just got to keep investing in me. That's my best shot.
And Darla, are there different type of narcissistic, like narcissist and narcissistic behaviors, or they have the same kind of features? I don't know anything about it, so that's why I'm asking this in your experience.
hmm So there is a spectrum. They are at all different levels. I will say that the last two I had were lower on the spectrum. I wouldn't tag them as malignant like my first one. And malignant is they just none of them have a filter or a moral compass, but the malignant to me is much more dangerous. I was stalked, physically unsafe, still am to this day, and I've decided to live my life on my terms anyway, because part of control is to indirectly allow him to scare me into not being where I want to be. Like I moved back to Colorado in March because I wanted to be home. This is my heart home. And it doesn't matter. No, it doesn't matter that the danger when I left 11 years is no less. So, yes, there is a spectrum. Um, they do similar things. Like on one hand, they're highly intelligent, but on the other hand, they're kind of stupid because you can kind of predict and see the pattern of behavior is the same. They all love bomb. They all have a gimmick. Each one of my three had a different gimmick.
Mhm.
The first one was his charming, drop dead good looks. I mean, what I saw, the beauty on the outside was nothing compared, is not what's going on inside. The second one tapped into my love of travel and love bombed me with monthly trips. Or no, that was the third one. But the second one, he guilted me. He was a brain cancer survivor, so he basically played on my sympathies of wanting to help, and that was my codependent crap. So that's my part. But there are that, and but yeah, they're different, but they're the same. Let's put it that way.
Mhm. Oh, thank you so much for explaining that. That is, yeah, so good to know. And Darla, could you talk a little bit about what can help people? Because it could be like woman and a man that get trapped in this type of relationship, right? It's not just us females, right?
Yes, yes, there are females as well. Hmm
Yeah. So what could help us? Like, how do we start, like, I don't know, seeing recognized? Is it like with the self-love and bringing up the self-worth? Or are these people usually they are very low in self-worth and self-love that they get into those type of relationship? Or how did people get involved?
hmm
Yeah.
hmm Anyone can, and I know in some areas there's a stereotype that women who get in abusive relationships um, do have low self-esteem. And yes, I did have abandonment issues and all of that I needed to work out. But there are also women out there who don't have those, who get swindled, and they get to that point by the end of it. I think the best thing any woman can do is invest in herself, because to be honest, when you are in the throes of these relationships, self love is, to be honest, that's an impossible thing to achieve, either when you're in it or when you've just gotten out. Because I don't want to say broken. I love what one of my podcast guests said a few weeks ago about how we're not broken, we're becoming. We have been broken down. We have been minimalized. We have become something we aren't. And self-love, I don't think is attainable in that moment. But what I advise women to do is, if you feel something's off, even if it seems bizarre, your
Mhm.
body tells you.
Right.
Go to a trusted friend, go to a support group. That's the biggest thing. Go to a support group where, if you think it's like, so I went to Al-Anon because I was married to two alcoholics.
Mhm.
Um, if you think your spouse is an alcoholic, the best place to figure that out is to go to Al-Anon or go to an AA meeting and talk to an alcoholic. Don't talk to another narcissist. That won't work. But go to a support group and say, this is my experience.
Yeah.
What do you think? Therapists, there's a lot of great therapists, but I would also caution that if they don't have lived experience in narcissistic abuse or trauma, I was actually re traumatized, which is how I got into this in the first place, because they didn't understand the brainwashing capacity. But find out first, I'm feeling this is off. and then start investing in yourself. Definitely start to build yourself up. Don't tell the narcissist. Don't go to therapy with them because they will turn the therapist against you, which is what happened in my last narcissistic relationship. He turned the therapist against me, and then she was attacking me in the couples therapy sessions and
Oh,
making me the bad guy. They're very manipulative, but invest in yourself. And if you leave, don't tell them. So my last boyfriend did not show any violent tendencies in the year that I lived with him. But a month after I kicked him out, he broke into my apartment. And I did not have cameras at the time. Now I do. I saw the evidence, but I had no proof. But I had a 120-pound dog at the time, and nobody was getting past that dog unless that dog knew it. The person, there was no blood, there was no evidence of a scuffle, but an evidence of a break-in. So even though he never showed violence, he had the mental messed up capacity to get into my apartment after I took back the key. I don't know what his reasoning was. It doesn't matter. It was an invasion. And you just never know what's under that hood. Just be careful.
oh my God, Darla.
Hmm.
That is so scary, to be honest. Yeah,
It
it
is. It is.
it is, and it's so many out there. And do they know that they are narcissist? Oh no, they don't.
I think some do. I think if they're lower on the spectrum, they could be aware. It doesn't mean they can change who they are because they're hardwired that way in their brain. But I think that the majority of them know. I don't think they that is an unacceptable reality because first of all, they're never wrong. It's never their fault. So no, I don't. I think they know that they're manipulative because they do it on purpose. But would they accept the term narcissist? Oh no.
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 So that's the red flag.
Yeah. Yeah.
Narcissist, right? I said, no. Oh my God.
No, and to even say it, to even, I wouldn't even
Yeah,
recommend if you're with someone and you figure it out. And
just
Dr. Ramani, who's actually an expert, she's a licensed therapist and a fantastic expert and source of really good information, will say that. Has said all along, never tell a narcissist you know they're a narcissist. It won't end well. Whether you're in danger or not, they're not, that
yeah.
conversation's not going to go very well.
Yeah. Well, I just wonder, like, just for my own curiosity, how did they become like? Is there some issues with the childhood, the way they were brought into this world, that they became that type of personality where they need to abuse other people?
I don't think they were born that way. I mean, while I do believe there's a small amount of people that are born mentally off, psychopath, I think the majority of them weren't. And here's the sad part of it. Not that I condone anything that they do,
Mm.
but something early in their childhood happened to them that sent a very strong message that who you are, is not a good person. You have to be something else. You are not accepted, and that somewhere they were denied love for who they were. And I have observed in some of my relationships where the parents were very controlling. There was a lot of pressure to be a certain way, to be accepted. Maybe they were in a situation where the parent was in a church and the pastor, and they were expected to be perfect no matter what it was something very, very traumatic, way worse than the average trauma that is very early. So they, in their prefrontal cortex, which is here, where
Mhm.
we develop empathy, the ability to take accountability, the ability to understand emotion in its purest form, they don't form those neural pathways.
Um, Oh my gosh, Darla, this is so amazing. I'm so happy that we got connected and to get talking about these things. And you
Yeah.
explained so well and so much in how to, well, recognize, but I understand it's tricky, right? As you were saying, you probably would never know at the beginning.
Mm-mm.
But yeah, because it just it's not obvious clearly. It's just something that later. And by the stat, do you know, like, is there any statistics like how many of those the type of relationship exist? Because they're quite common, no?
They're
Yeah,
getting more common. And
yeah,
I can't, to be honest. So statistically, they say 1% of the population, but there's been many of us that have said we think it's higher because why would they go to a therapist? And even though all three of mine have not been officially diagnosed, I am not in the camp of I have to be a therapist to say that's what they are. In fact, I find it quite offensive because you weren't in my house. You didn't see what I saw. And I don't need a piece of paper from the mental health community to give me the ability to say this is that. But statistically, 1%, I say it's higher. I do think that awareness about narcissistic abuse and narcissism is on the rise. On the other hand, I think that word is overused. If you're a jerk, that doesn't make you a narcissist. It's a pattern of behavior. All of us can be difficult, selfish. We can be narcissistic at one point or another. But when you have a pattern of manipulation and a lack of morals, that's where it comes in. Is our society making more narcissist? Possibly. It seems to be on the rise. But then again, if you look at our mother's generation, no one talked about abuse. You just sucked it up. Divorce wasn't an option in our previous generations.
yeah,
Women weren't allowed to speak. In fact, in some cases, they were drugged and institutionalized for speaking out. Now we have the power to speak out.
yeah. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
this is so good, amazing. And um, just to understand, just a little bit about what you do, if you could touch, because you have a podcast. Would you like to share with my audience where they can
Yeah,
find
sure.
the podcast and what do you do? Like, do you help like females or I don't know, like with abuse or what exactly you do? If you could give a little bit understanding, please.
Hmm. Yeah. So my podcast is called You Have the Power, The Road to Recovery from Trauma and Narcissistic Abuse. And I talk a lot about a lot of different things. So I'm in the process of trying out four-part series on one specific theme. I did a series on reclaiming your voice after abuse. Gosh, I'm trying to remember the series I just finished because I pre-record them. Sometimes I lose track. I
Yeah.
did just start a series this week on somatics. So you heard me refer to that, and that is the nervous system and
Yeah.
how that can actually help us be aware of what's going on in our lives as well.
Yeah.
I talk a lot about resilience. I have people come on as guests as well and talk about their own healing journeys. I have someone coming on in a couple weeks that she's going to share about trauma informed yoga, ways for us to heal our bodies, our minds, and I'm going to have a series coming up in 4 weeks about sexual abuse. I want to talk about those topics people feel a lot of shame about, or maybe they think they're the only one because I did. And a lot of these things I've experienced too. And our generational trauma. Also, what no one wants to talk about in my family is that we have a long history of generational trauma, which is not abnormal on both sides. And now that I'm revealing who my father really was and what he really did, there are people in my family that don't want to hear that. But that's okay. That's where they are. Maybe they'll never be able, but it's okay for me to share that because I know there's somebody else out there that's experienced it and it gives them a voice. Whether they want to go public or not is irrelevant, but it lets them know at the first of all, hey, someone else did experience this and there's nothing wrong with me and I can heal.
Yeah. This is amazing. And your podcast, is it on which platform we can find you? Is it Spotify,
Yeah.
Apple,
I'm on Spotify. Yep.
Spotify,
Spotify, Apple, and Amazon Music. And I'm on YouTube as well. So
and YouTube? Brilliant. And Darla, when you finish, would you mind sharing the link so people can follow you?
yes.
And
Yeah.
if there is anything else that you are helping with, if you have a website or
hmm
things that you do,
I
and
do.
also if you could share in the comments so people can, guys, you can get directly with Darla and ask questions in the comments or just get in touch directly with her as well. And Darla, just before we're gonna go, I always like to ask this question. Um,
Uh-huh.
when you hear the next level or next level transformation, What does it mean to you? What the first thoughts that coming to your mind? Next
The
level.
first thought that comes yeah, the first thought that comes to mind is that healing is kind of like a stepping stone. And so
Mm.
that next level transformation is just one of those stepping stones. It's the next glass ceiling per se.
Yeah, yeah, I love it.
hmm
Darla, any final thoughts before we go to my audience? If you have
You
any,
know, one
yeah,
yeah, definitely. You know, when it comes to resilience, it doesn't matter what happened to you. It really just matters what you do with it. And it's okay to make mistakes, to have setbacks. I love to say that tomorrow can always be day one. You can always just start over, brush yourself off, and it's okay.
beautiful. Darla, thank you so much for being here. Guys, thank you so much for
Thank you.
watching. And if you could stay for 1 sec, I'm just gonna stop this
Yes.
live video. Thank you so much, guys, and I'll see you then next time.